Hey everybody, welcome back to Conquest of Ea. And for today's video, we had somebody request that we do a rundown of the Theist Priest, kind of like we did the chapter mage a few days ago. So that's what this video is going to cover. But before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we are affiliated with Bellum Games. And if you guys need any models for Conquest, for any army, go ahead and use the link below in the description of the video. It'll take you over to their web store. And then anything you buy through that link, I'll get a small kickback from. And I really appreciate, that's a great way to support the channel. And then if you don't need new models, because you already have bought a ton of Conquest stuff like I have, just feel free to like and subscribe the video if you like the content. If you get any use out of the channel through your Conquest games, I also appreciate that as well. So let's get into the Theist Priest and see what kind of combos he can do, kind of like we looked at the chapter mage a few days ago. Alright, so the Theist Priest, you can see is a little more defensive than the Chapter Mage with that defense at 2, although not by much. You probably don't want him dueling too many things, unless you cast a spell, which we'll talk about a little later. He comes built in with Cleave 1, which is really awesome when he is going to be fighting. He only has 4 attacks, which isn't a ton for a character at Clash 2, but you know, he does push a little extra damage through. He also comes in with Fearless, which we'll take a look at because I don't think a lot of players really know what that does. And he ignores the effects of Fearsome and Terrifying, which at first you might think that's really, really awesome. But unfortunately, if just the character stand has this, they don't give it to the regiment that they're in. They only benefit it like in a duel action, so it's not super useful unless you're dueling something with Terrifying. Then you won't take that extra morale damage. But he also does have Devout, which is pretty cool. So he does give this to his regiment. It specifically calls it out, you know, if the character has Devout and he's in the regiment, they get it as well. And when their regiment that he's in is the target of a priest spellcasting action, one failed spellcasting die is converted to a success. So casting his prayers on his own unit is just a little more efficient. And he has priest 5. You probably have buff that up to priest 6 through a retinue. But just a standard priest 5, that seems to be the standard like mage level throughout the game. And his spirit supremacy ability is the Spirit Shines. I'll be honest, I haven't played with this one yet, but it does have some pretty cool, like if you build your entire army around it combos. But once per battle, any spellcasting actions performed by your Theist Priests, they target the regiment he's attached to, but they also target all the regiment on the table with Devout on the battlefield. So you can give Devout through some like officer upgrades and units in 100 Kingdoms. So we'll look at the spells in a second and then see if this is worth it to, you know, have a one turn of just give everything on the table with Devout all these buffs. And then as far as his spells, Holy Fire is only 10-inch range, which is pretty short, but he's going to be up there in a melee unit most likely, so he'll get to cast this probably. And it just is a 2-3, 2 hits per success. So when you buff him up to that priest 6, and he can be rerolling some dice with his retinue, this is just a way to get extra hits before you go in, although it's not the most exciting spell in the world. Next we have Saint's Favor. I really like this one. I mean, I've put Theist Priest just in a minimum unit of militia in the past, just so he can hang out behind my knights or my men-at-arms to cast onto them to give them +1 defense. So you can get your knights up to defense 5 as well as like your men-at-arms up to defense 5. Steel Legion defense 5 with the Bastion that they have. And then so you're looking at like Dweg numbers of defense, which is really, really awesome. And the best part about this, as we'll see, Heavenly Blessing, you can give somebody Blessed, which we'll talk about next. But this lasts until the end of the round, so you're getting that benefit every time your opponent attacks that unit. And Heavenly Blessing gives them Blessed, which is awesome. You can either reroll during a clash or a charge or a defense roll. You can reroll all of those dice. So now with the change to Blessed, you have to pick before you roll the dice, so you don't get to see how many you failed. But it's still really, really good, like a once per round do-over basically. And if you have something like coming in like Steel Legion or Knights impact attacks, especially now with the new rules that the Knights get cleave when they charge, if you have that on there, this can be really, really strong. Fervor is next. It just takes broken off of a unit, it's okay. Just don't forget that you have this, because there are going to be times when a unit gets broken in a weird spot that you don't want to like use a rally action of theirs. There's no character in there to rally them, or the character's already gone. It's a high price to pay because your Theist Priest is only casting one time to cast this on a unit, but if it means the difference between you holding an objective and not and scoring points, just remember this is in your back pocket if you have to use it. And I actually just noticed this says range self 12 inches in the middle of the word self. So I'm going to go look over at the actual army book, because the army books are where the actual rules come from. If something in the list builder doesn't look right, definitely check out your army sheet on Parabellum's website. So I'm going to go check that out, and then after we go over the Theist Priest, I'll definitely mention if it's range self or 12 inches. Hopefully it's 12 inches. I think it is. And last, a cool one is Divine Sanction. So this is range self, and it's human 3, and the character gets cleave +1, so you'll be cleave 2, deadly blades, quicksilver strike until the end of the round. And in addition, when you cast it, you just get to fight a duel if you're in a duel with another character. So all these are offensive buffs, which is cool. You get quicksilver strike, so you get to attack first. But unless you buff this Theist Priest up with other melee things, you only have 4 attacks. You're still only hitting on, if it's an out of sequence dual action, you're only hitting on 2s. So maybe it'll do some damage to that character, but like there's a very real chance you don't kill them and you get killed back in return. But the cool thing you can do with Divine Sanction with the Spirit Shines is if you cast it at all friendly regiments with a Devout, you benefit from the rules, but you don't perform the dual action. So if one turn, if the Theist Priest, you're using that Supremacy ability, all units with Devout in your army get cleave +1 and deadly blades. So that's going to give units like Men-at-Arms cleave 1 and deadly blades, which is awesome because they're just really, really tough, but hit like pool noodles, but not anymore with this, once per game, to be fair. Or like Steel Legion just pushes them through like any defenses that people might have, that they're going to go up to like cleave 3 and deadly blades, so that's awesome. Is it worth using your Supremacy ability over? I don't know, I've never tried it. I guess I should try it, but I feel like once per turn, like a big combo turn, as long as you can guarantee that you're going to get into combat with multiple of your Devout units, it'll be really, really good. But if you use this, because you have to declare it at the beginning of the round when you declare your Supremacy ability, your opponent probably will know, I really don't want to get engaged with my opponent this turn because he's coming in with that Divine Sanction play. Alright, now let's take a look at some of the heirlooms, masteries, and the retinue that the Theist Priest has access to. We're going to start with the heirlooms, and a really, really cool combo you can do with the Theist Priest is take the Elysian Fragment. It's under Arcane, so you have to have like the Wizard or Priest keyword able to take either of these. So the Elysian Fragment for 20 points gives you the Elysian Fragment draw event, so we'll click that. And you can activate it only once per battle, but then until the end of the round, the regiment this character stand is currently attached to gains the Smite special rule. So Smite lets you count the defense characteristic as 0 of any hits that you're doing with your regiment. And it includes dual actions as well. So this is for the entire round, so it would include when the Theist Priest himself and a regiment make a clash, and as well if the Theist Priest makes dual actions, with the use of like Divine Sanction would be an awesome time to use it. So the Theist Priest can sit in Militia or Militia Bowman. So obviously he wants to be in Militia if he's taking this Elysian Fragment. And if you just take like 8 stands of Militia, Standard Bearer, and I usually like the Errant or the Order of the Shield because it gives you more attacks. And they already have the Devout keyword, really. Or you can give them the +1 March and Resolve from the Servite for 15. And then with the Veterans keyword, Army Roll, they're going to be able to Clash 3, so Clash 4 when they're inspired. And with support 2 each, you're just getting a ton of attacks with this combination with the Smite keyword that are actually pretty accurate. So this is going to like blender through anything in the game, no matter how high their defense is. Now it doesn't set their evasion to 0, so if your target has evasion, but usually things are like evasion 2, and usually defense is way, way higher, so this can be awesome to take care of those really, really high armored units, kind of like the Steel Forge that we saw come out. This combo takes a little setting up because the draw event happens when your character activates, not the unit, so you won't be able to draw event from the militia, charge, and attack. It takes at least one draw from the priest, then the militia drawing. So just make sure your militia are in a semi-safe place where they can Theist Priest activates, they'll even have a chance to cast a spell, and then they can charge in after that. He has access to another heirloom of Hopes and Prayers. And the first time he's reduced to 0 wounds, you don't remove him. Instead, you put him back with 1 wound remaining. This could be hilarious if you're doing like a dueling Theist Priest build, where he just gets a Quicksilver Strike, fight someone, he doesn't kill him, they kill him back, he just comes back, which is interesting. Although, if you do this and that character hasn't already activated, they're going to duel your Theist Priest back, and you only have 1 wound remaining. The retinue you can take is Combat, which is not really worth it. For 50 points, you can give him 5 wounds and an extra attack. I probably would never do that, but I would definitely take at least Arcane 1 to give him up to Priest 6. And then Arcane 2 and 3, it just depends if you're casting those scaling spells to make it a little more accurate. And last, we have the Masteries here. You're never going to take any of the combat masteries with him. He's not really a combat character. Other than those dueling like buffs you saw, we could give him for like 1 round. It's kind of interesting, but it's not worth throwing the points into him. He's focused for the cheapest one, where you can reroll 2 failed spellcasting die, but this requires you to be at Arcane Tier 3. And if you're already at Tier 3, you probably don't need to reroll those 2 dies because you have the buffs from Tier 3 already. Magus is pretty interesting. It subtracts 1 from the scaling that you need to 0. So if you're just Arcane 1 Magus, that's a really, really solid and dependable caster. And the last is Glimmer of Faith. He can treat any devout regiments on the battlefield with a spell range of self. He can cast those spells on there. So this is pretty cool if you're running that all devout build. I would probably throw this on him just so you could, cast spells at that longer range. But really, what you're going to take him for is really, really cheaply with, minimum militia or maybe even just militia bowmen to cast blessed or +1 defense on your units in the front lines while he kind of hangs out in the back. He is a medium stand, so he'll be able to sit in the back even in those light units and still contest or hold an objective for you. Or you're going to buff him up to go with a ton of militia stands to get that Elysian Fragment, like 1 big huge attack in there. It's kind of hard to set up, but it definitely does work, and it's really not that expensive for what you're getting. And last, I did want to check into the range of that Fervor spell that we mentioned earlier. And it looks like it is 12 inches, not just self. So this is just the one you shouldn't forget you have to rally a unit 12 inches away. Very useful, especially if you're that Theist Priest that's kind of hanging out on the back lines behind the frontline fighters. So that's it for our Theist Priest overview. Thanks for listening, everybody. And if you like the content and you want to see more Conquest content come through a little more often, just let me know in the comments what you'd like to see. I know one of our listeners asked for this Theist Priest overview, so I hope it helped them out. And we'll see what we can get for our next video. Thanks for watching, everybody, and good luck in your Conquest games out there.